Hello once again. I'm Dr. Noticeri from the Tactical Theology Department. In this video lecture series, we'll be looking at SCP-6659, Metagnostic. To assist in study and response to an emergent containment scenario, all Applied Metaphysics, Tactical Theology, and Counterconceptual personnel have been provided access to the following documents. The relevant security clearance has been temporarily lowered from level 5 top secret to level 4 secret. Recipients of this video file should also have been briefed on its contents. If you believe you have received this file in error, contact your supervisor and/or site director and cease reading immediately. SCP-6659 components are currently housed within the mobile site 184A. 184A is a high-security, semi-submersible research vessel. Mobile Site 184A was constructed from the remains of SCP-D to prevent its various benefits and technological capabilities and latent quasi-anomalous properties. It has largely functioned to facilitate covert research operations, often relating to one or more hostile groups of interest seeking to prevent or manipulate said research. It's currently anchored in an undisclosed location off the coast of Nova Scotia. Any identified vessel entering within 10 kilometers of Mobile Site 184A is to be redirected via Cover S55 Delicate Marine Study. In the event a hostile party attempts to approach Mobile Site 184A, the vessel must exercise its full submergence capabilities, descending to a depth of 150 meters for a period of up to 72 hours. Should any hostile party successfully board Mobile Site 184A, its onboard scuttle system is to activate, thereby triggering a series of explosive charges positioned along the vessel's length. A supermajority of crew members assigned to Mobile Site 184A are aware of and have either explicitly or implicitly agreed to this emergency procedure. In the event that contact with Mobile Site 184A is lost, its emergency beacon is initiated, or its scuttle system is activated. Foundation Nautical Forces stationed at Mobile Site 184A are to undertake search and rescue, military intervention, and/or salvage operations as necessary. Crew members assigned to Mobile Site 184A but not actively involved in the maintenance and/or operation of SCP-6659 are forbidden from descending below Operational Deck 4, except approval from Captain S. Jones or Doctors Milton or Blake. Each of SCP-6659's components are only to be activated, whether simultaneously or in isolation, following verification of confirmed O5 Council order, and must be joint initiated by Drs. Milton and Blake. Following activation, assigned technicians must perform a complete examination and diagnosis of the associated digital, biomechanical, and noetic systems composing SCP-6659. We move on now to Addendum 1, Theological Context, a foundation for reciprocal worship, practical applications of human to deity relations. From the Journal of Tactical Theology, Volume 72, John Blake, 1933. Gods exist because we believe in them, and to make us believe in them. The very nature of our relationship with the divine is reciprocal. We create beings of parahuman ability, whom we then elevate beyond ourselves and imbue with significance. These beings, in turn, rely on this recognition to define the scope and breadth of their influence and existence. Fundamental to this dynamic is the act of worship, an expression of recognition that embodies the deity in the psychosphere. While gods are real, their existence is derived from and contained within the realm of human thought. Their measurable manifestations in the physical world are restricted to the formation of totemic avatars. Despite this limitation, such conceptual entities are capable of enacting change in the physical world around us, and frequently do so to varying extents, performing miraculous acts, manifesting their presence through omens, and bestowing boons upon chosen acolytes. The extent and nature of these direct interactions are shaped by and reflect the worship a deific entity receives from human or non-human persons, as well as their conceptual topography within the psychosphere. We created gods, and in doing so offer them the power and influence to shape their own image, and our perception of that image. Given this paradigm, the question emerges of how an organization, such as the Foundation, ought to respond to threats posed by deific entities. Thus far, standard operating procedure advocates for preventative measures. Organized religion and acts of worship have been quietly nudged towards conceptualization of gods as hands-off entities, whose involvement in day-to-day affairs is inconsequential, or a uniform background presence that stabilizes consensus reality. While this method has been largely successful in ensuring hostile deific entities do not gain significant traction in mainstream culture and religious practices, current reactive measures to emergent threats are often inadequate. The Foundation's response to active deific threats prioritizes dismantling systems of worship in the physical world that define and support the behavior of such a deity. However, identification and neutralization of cult formations engaging in active worship of malicious or normalcy-threatening deific entities have seen mixed results, with consequences ranging from high mortality rates of assigned operatives and numerous threats to the integrity of the veil. The current method appears unsustainable. Deific entities are not locked to the physical world, including the cultural groups that engage in their worship. Through their manifestation in the psychosphere, they can traverse along lines of conceptual relation, touching and influencing different peoples around the world, inspiring new cult formations which themselves become and/or splinter into divergent sects. So just a quick note here, when Dr. Blake in this journal from 93 refers to the psychosphere, this is a bit of an antiquated term for the new sphere that perhaps you're more familiar with in the modern term parlance. A quick description of SCP-6659 on a technical working standard. The SCP is a Foundation-designed eigenweapon developed for the neutralization of hostile deific entities. This device is composed of 3 interconnected systems, which function to destabilize a given deific entity's embodied memeplex within the new sphere, preventing their conceptualization and consequently worship. These systems are as follows. The first part, SCP-6659-A, the Trismegistus Engine Totemic Signifier, or the TETS. This is derived from SCP-6699's Elmswood Engine. SCP-6659-A is employed to map existing relational lines of conceived association between a physical object and applied mimetic constructs. In its current use, a totem, an item conceptually associated with a specific deific entity, is inserted into the device, which subsequently identifies and traces the boundaries of the relevant deific entity within the new sphere. This enables the entity's mimetic construct to be conceptually identified as distinct from other noetic quanta. Second part, SCP-6659-B. Jadul Jerry Conceptual Applicator. Having identified and isolated the targeted deific entity within the noosphere via SCP-6659-A, SCP-6659-B applies a conceptual framework of universal acceleration to all individual data points forming the mimetic construct. As a result, the data comprising the deific entity is accelerated to supraconceptual velocities, whereby the individual components of the mimetic construct can only be conceived in relation to their relative accelerated movement. As a result, the lines of conceptual relations that form the construct weaken and subsequently dissolve, rendering the construct incapable of cohesively existing as an assemblage within the noosphere, and thus preventing any interaction between data points, both external and internal to the construct. SCP-6659-C, the 7th Biomechanical Data Storage Vault, Generation 7 Biomechanical Data Storage Vault, composed of 25 vats containing biomechanical computation devices suspended in artificial cerebrospinal fluid. SCP-6659-C is capable of storing and analyzing memetic data of conceptually isolated and accelerated deific entities without engaging in a reciprocal conceptual relationship, i.e. worship. The computational systems of SCP-6659-C additionally monitor the ongoing process of SCP-6659-A and B while simultaneously providing a digi-noospheric interface for human examiners to examine and interpret relevant conceptual data. So I know that's a lot, so let's explain that a little bit. The first part, the Trismegistus engine, takes in a physical item, a totem, a representation of a certain deity or worship group, scans it, and is able to identify the relevant cluster in the noosphere. Each deity is made up of individual significant points of worship. These are core values, these are themes, these are memetic tracers. Individually, it is made up of these, and the whole forms the memeplex, the God, the understanding of it. The first part allows it to be identified from a physical item. The second part is how the SCP actually works. The Dididium conceptual applicator accelerates the individual data points to a point where they become memetically unrecognizable. They are accelerated past their thematic importance into a non-recognizable, almost alien conceptual form, in which case they are unable to interconnect with the other memetic data points in the way they used to form the whole of its parts, the deific entity. This, in effect, severs or separates the worshippers and existing ideas in the human consciousness and the Gestalt noosphere from direct association with the entity, kind of cutting it off at the stalk, so to speak, distancing the mortal worshippers from the deific entity on conceptual lines of connection, being accelerated past any significant meaning or association. The third part, C, is basically the computation interface by which we can actually interact with the other two components without being directly influenced by deific entities. Biomechanical computational devices suspended in cerebrospinal fluid. I mean, it's pretty obvious what that is about, and that's the reason, that's the most human of human interfaces necessary for an eigenweapon like this to really operate. Now that you have a better understanding of the device itself, we're moving on to Addendum 2, Project Introduction. This is written by Dr. Sandra Milton, the co-lead of Applied Metaphysics, an excerpt from Introductory Briefings and Project Dididium. While the initial proposal for this project focused more broadly on the creation of an anomaly employed by the Foundation for the decommissioning of other anomalous phenomena, the subtext was clear. We require a means to combat gods. The Foundation, for all its grandiose notions of ideas, its flirtations with concepts behind the veil of normalcy, remains an institution of bricks, mortar, bodies, and paper. Applied Metaphysics does not reject this notion. We need to know where our limitations are, as it's the only way to push beyond them. SCP-6659 is a culmination of that drive to extend beyond the physical. While the noosphere permeates every aspect of our lives, what it means to think, what we can and cannot conceive of, our ability to alter it has been unrefined at best. When it comes to non-physical threats, the Foundation requires a new approach to accomplish its goal: the securing, containment, and protection of humanity and resultant normalcy at all costs. We have been dying aimlessly in the dark, hoping to pull it off. We needed to become the scalpel, capable of exercising specific dangers with negligible damage to those living in the light. That's where Dididium comes in. While these mimetic constructs are worshipped as deities, they each are only another anomaly to be understood and will be treated as such. Those who threaten the Foundation will be contained, their influence and danger mitigated, and the world will keep turning. Welcome to the team. We're glad to have you. Next, we have an excerpt from Dr. John Blake, once again, the co-lead from Tactical Theology. Another excerpt from an introductory briefing on Project Dididium. My colleague has explained the importance of this project. I am here to tell you not to be too hasty. The notion of worship is not exclusive to what we would typically consider deific entities. Our modern society elevates nearly every facet of contemporary life beyond its inherent values and means. Democracy, family, capitalism. Each of such concepts defines our relationship to the world. These concepts are in flux. They change and shift based on individual minds, informed by their beliefs and their local collective consciousnesses, developing new forms with cultural shifts over time. What is the distinction between such a concept and the deific entity? The difference we may point to is that these concepts are inert unless acted upon. They are responsive to the human rather than engaged reciprocally. However, recent findings indicate this is a false assumption. We've begun to see that these concepts do respond. They influence us in ways we do not fully yet understand. Perhaps it is an issue of malice. Does the conceptual entity wish to harm us, to change our understanding of the world? But even then, the distinction is murky. Does a new political theory, relationship to nature, or revolutionary technology not potentially straddle this divide? Have we not seen the world shift and change, responsive to what were presumed to be non-anomalous procedures and influences? The process of apotheosis, so prevalent in our shared myths, is ill understood at best. We claim to know what a god is, intrinsically, if not rationally, but are ignorant as to how exactly they are formed within our collective consciousness. Our foundation, a secret gathering of people working towards a common goal, elevated the notion of securing, containing, and protecting, may not seem so dissimilar from the faith-driven groups we target. This project is necessary, yes, but it is gravely uncertain. This is a new relationship between humans and the divine, and the very relation itself is a concept which, if elevated by a worship, could have grave implications on the structure of reciprocity and definition. We risk idolizing the destruction of our idols, and we know not what ground we tread in doing so. The following is an excerpt from Addendum 3, Activation Log. We'll start with activation number 001. The specific totemized object has been redacted. The worship group of target has been redacted, and the results themselves are redacted. However, there is a notes section that's interesting. While the results of this activation cannot be verified, it is currently hypothesized that the conceptual acceleration applied to the mimetic construct association with this group of interest resulted in the complete obliteration of its noospheric relations. As a result, the entity, previously recorded information describing it, alongside any association it had to prior, are now impossible for human subjects to conceptualize. The specific totem has been transferred to Site 19 for containment. Efforts are underway to refine the selected application of conceptual acceleration to ensure the employed totems remain conceptual post-activation. Activation Log 2. The totemized object is a shriveled, mummified hand possessing an atypical muscular structure. The worship group of interest is called the Followers of the Angel's Path. The results of this activation are successful identification and acceleration of the mimetic construct. Notes: data from SCP-6659-C indicates the complete destabilization of the target mimetic construct. The deific entity was successfully decommissioned. Activation number 3. Totemized object. 2% milk, 1 carton, and a crucifix. The worship group being targeted are the disciples of Saint Bernard in the Path of the Savior. The results from this activation: successful identification and acceleration of mimetic construct. Due to the worship group's extensive historical cultural footprint, the Foundation is currently engaged in an ongoing attempt to alter the mythological concerning Saint Bernard to conflate with common Christian doctrine. This has included the canonization of Saint Bernard as a Christian saint and the proliferation of artworks depicting the Lactatio Bernardi that stylistically imitate medieval and Renaissance artists. The implication, of course, being that Saint Bernard in the Path of the Savior is a pre-existing cult of non-Christian origins, and that only by the activation of this eigen weapon has Saint Bernard been integrated into the Christian saint pantheon in modern parlance in our existing memeplex, and that knowledge of this precursor Saint Bernard cult figure doesn't exist in the memeplex outside of those personally on site during the activation of the eigen weapon and attached to SCP-6659-C's component human neural interface. 3 activations in the interim have been omitted, bringing us now to activation number 007. With the totemized object being a sacrificial dagger, the worship group being targeted, named as the Children of the Scarlet King. The results: successful identification and acceleration of mimetic construct. Due to the high degree of thaumaturgical users and position of leadership within this worship group, various sects have continued to operate post-activation. However, surveillance indicates that anomalous phenomena associated with these individuals are founded upon other thaumaturgic systems and bear no relation to the accelerated deific entity. Next, we have 175 activations omitted, bringing us on to activation number 182. The totemized object being loaded in is a Cervidae skull. The worship group being targeted is the 9th Green Lodge. Results: inconclusive. Activation 182 manually aborted due to system failure. Activation log notes. Following activation, SCP-6659-A and B appeared to successfully isolate and accelerate the targeted deific entity. However, during SCP-6659-C's review of relevant mimetic data, a series of cascading errors led to a catastrophic system failure. Subsequently, 6 of the vats composing SCP-6659-C ruptured. A power surge emanating from SCP-6659-A caused an electrical fire within SCP's control room, and two technicians supervising -B spontaneously demanifested, one individual remanifesting approximately 5 meters above sea level adjacent to Mobile Site 184-A. The other individual remains missing, presumed deceased. As a result of this event, henceforth Incident 0E5, the operation of SCP-6659 has been suspended. Repairs to the various systems and an investigation into the causes of this incident are underway. We move on to Addendum 4, Post-Incident Debriefing. The follow is an audio transcript contained within the conference room aboard Mobile Site 184-A, located on Deck B1. Present are Dr. Sandra Milton, Dr. John Blake, Captain S. Jones, Technician Rupert Sawdye, and various maintenance and operation technicians for the site. Forward. Following the events of Incident E5, personnel assigned to the maintenance and operation of the Eigen weapon were assembled to discuss the events. The following transcript occurs after a summary of ongoing repairs to parts -A, B, and C. The transcript begins with Dr. Milton thanking everybody for gathering and asking if the repairs are underway. Technician Sawdye responds by being a bit nervous and saying it was a bigger crowd than he expected. Dr. Milton assures him that it's all right and to go ahead when he's ready. Tech Sawdye begins by clarifying that the discrepancy didn't occur during the incident. With the tanks rupturing and everything, the whole system went haywire. He apologizes for getting ahead of himself, explaining that everyone here knows that SCP-6659-C monitors previously accelerated mimetic constructs in the noosphere to make sure everything goes as it should, meaning there's no latent activity within the dissociated construct. He explains that we call that baseline state sterile, assuming SCP-6659 functioned as intended. This entails no interaction between data points which previously composed the construct. Well, while reviewing the data, he noticed some activity in the data cluster of a deific entity that the Foundation had previously successfully accelerated beyond conception. He explains that these slides are representations from SCP-6659-C over a 6-hour period. He then shows the slides on screen, a collection of 3 circles composed of half-wing figment figures. One is white, the other is a brown, the third is an overlaid chromatic circle of this formula. Tech Sawdye goes on to explain that after this window, the activity dissipated back to nothing, as though it hadn't even happened, which was part of the reason it had been missed until now. He explains that this is highly irregular. Dr. Milton cuts him off, asking if he is suggesting that this previous activation didn't function properly. He goes on to explain that no, that's actually the odd part. The activation was completely successful, that he had double-checked all the relevant data, that this is the only irregularity, and that while it's entirely normal for new lines of conceptual association to form as conception expands and changes, that the use of SCP-6659 should have rendered this impossible. Dr. Blake asks if this was spontaneous. Tech Sawdye responds that that is one theory, but he's unsure. He continues that that sort of spontaneity doesn't seem feasible, given his understanding of the noospheric and SCP-6659's properties, that it's a linked network, that these things respond to each other, but the individual points within this data cluster were completely isolated. They didn't just interact along previous lines of relation either, they formed new ones. Something like that requires this section of the cluster to be acted upon, but as he's already covered, Dr. Blake asks if he means to suggest that something external to the noosphere caused this. He says he's not qualified to say, but Dr. Blake, worried, asks if something like that is even possible. Dr. Milton says the truth is we wouldn't have any way of knowing, definitionally, that we can't comprehend something which functions outside the realm of our comprehension. In theory, we shouldn't even be able to reason about it in the abstract. The fact that we're able to do so demonstrates the futility of even attempting to think about it. Dr. Blake suggests running some tests to try and isolate whatever it is by mapping the new lines of association. Dr. Milton says that that would be complicated and ultimately inadvisable due to the fundamental property of not knowing what they're really dealing with. Dr. Blake responds that it's what we designed the damn machine to do, isn't it? It's why we have it. so why aren't we targeting the new threats? He explains that we've seen what deific entities are capable of if this isn't responsive to SCP-6659 or whatever the hell -B is doing, that we're in the dark. He explains that we need to know what we're dealing with. Would it be possible to try and isolate whatever the new complex causing the interaction is? Side-Eye responds that he's still not sure. He would need to speak with the team, and Dr. Milton cuts him off, that we're not getting started on this, at least not until repairs are finished. Dr. Blake thinks this is ridiculous, and that we need to act quickly, that whatever is going on, we need to be ready to respond. Dr. Milton responds that someone's dead. Christ, would you get out of your own damn head? That this isn't just some esoteric theory, there are repercussions, that we're at, almost 48 hours, and asks what the hell are we supposed to write to inform the vanished text next of kin. Dr. Milton sighs, saying that it's out of our hands anyway, explaining that a memo came in from O5 earlier, that they're supposed to pause testing for the foreseeable future. They've also decided to share information related to SCP-6659 and Incident E5 with specialists at other Foundation sites. Dr. Blake asks if they're shutting us down, and Milton responds, not yet, and we should be glad they haven't. We're just hitting pause and getting some more eyes on the situation. This is the end of the transcript, with a slight afterword. During the remainder of the conference, Dr. Blake was seen on camera leaving the conference room in an agitated state. The remainder of the meeting addressed ongoing repairs to SCP-6659. Technicians were selected to liaison with off-site specialists to address concerns regarding potential causes of Incident E5. Moving on now to Addendum 5, Ongoing Emergent Scenario. The following is another audiovisual transcript. The following transcript was recovered from Dr. Milton's quarters security feed. Dr. Blake enters and asks if he's got a second. Dr. Milton responds that he does, and that she should have a seat. Dr. Blake thanks her and asks and says that he wanted to come by to apologize for losing his temper earlier, that he understands he got a bit hot-headed there, and that he was caught up in his own reaction to the negligence of the larger project. Dr. Milton explains that she also apologizes and that she could have handled it a bit more tactfully. She understands that this whole thing has their nerves a little frayed. Dr. Blake asks if he has ever told her that he used to be a pastor. Dr. Milton responds that she thinks she read something along those lines looking at his resume a long time ago. He says it's strange. He was really convinced it was what he was meant to do, to spread the word of God, honestly. He wasn't too keen on the specific doctrine, but he did believe there was something truly transcendent out there watching us. He says that changed when he joined the Foundation. It was funny, actually, having actual proof that gods are real, that they're fallible, that they have blind spots. That was what broke his faith, that the more we study them, understand them, the less they seem like gods, that we're able to point to them and say, that's God right there. And with SCP-6659, we can essentially annihilate them, or at least render them dormant. There's nothing wondrous about that, nothing transcendental. Dr. Milton sighs and explains that it's always like this. Even if you didn't know before, this is how it's always been happening the whole time. We're just now starting to understand how these beings interact with us. If you're serious about studying theology, then this is what it actually is. He responds that he knows that, but still, shouldn't there be more? Look at what we saw today. We've got no idea what caused the reaction. It could be something else entirely. It could be... He hesitates, then sighs. You know what? It's fine. I'm just tired, stressed, like you said. Dr. Milton turns back to her desk and says, don't take this the wrong way, but you might want to consider putting in a transfer, or at least taking a sabbatical maybe. Dr. Blake responds that there's no rest for the godless, and would she mind today at all if he took a copy of today's transcripts. She tells him to go ahead and ushers him a good night. Moving on to audiovisual transcript B-2. This transcript was recovered from Research Deck 6, in which SCP-6659's main apparati are operated and maintained, and it depicts Dr. Blake's actions immediately following the previous log. At the beginning of the transcript, Dr. Blake is seen entering the control room for SCP-6659-A. He removes his glasses and sets them upon a nearby countertop before sealing the door to the room, a large submarine-grade bulkhead, and proceeds to position the legs of a nearby metal chair within the rotating locking mechanism, presumably to restrict access from the other side. Dr. Blake turns to face the ceiling-mounted security camera. He begins, "To whom it may concern, my name is Reverend John Blake. Until this moment, I have been acting co-lead of Project Dididium, representing the SCP Foundation Departments of Tactical Theology." You love the representation of the department here. Maybe not the best light, but I am of sound body and mind, and I am acting under my own volition. Dr. Blake continues, "I intend to insert my own head into SCP-6659-A and scan it, in an attempt to map the entity responsible for Incident-E5. I suspect that mapping the human brain in likeness and tota will reveal a transcendent deity embodying the concept, while eluding the conception of humanity. To enable myself to take this course of action, I have acquired Dr. Sandra Milton's SCP-6659 activation key without her knowledge or consent. I am acting independently. What I am about to do has been in no way permitted or condoned by any of the persons stationed alongside me on Mobile Site 184A. Dr. Blake then proceeds to insert both his and Dr. Sandra Milton's activation keys into the central console of SCP-6659 and initiates the activation procedure, overriding safety protocols as he does so. Dr. Blake then opens the compartment of the eigenweapon reserved for suitable totems, kneels before it, and inserts his head into the device. A period of several minutes passes as standard initiation procedures commence. The activation is noticed by maintenance personnel and an emergency alarm is engaged. The scuttle system is primed, with firing control given to Captain S. Jones. Crew members are dispatched to apprehend Dr. Blake. Dr. Blake responds with profanity, then proceeds to mumble incomprehensibly for the duration of the machine's activation. On-site mobile task force personnel arrived at the reinforced door leading to the control room. Unable to force the door open, one proceeds to retrieve a laser torch utilized for salvage operations and vessel repairs. As they successfully cut through one of the two supporting hinges of the door, Dr. Blake's body begins convulsing. An unidentified clear liquid seeps from the central compartment of SCP-6659-A, pooling around Dr. Blake's knees. Dr. Blake responds that something sees him, that he can't move, that a tumor of thought has seen him, that it has seized him. God wishes to show him that it's inside, that it's... The door then gives way as the second hinge breaks. Crew members rush inside to find Dr. Blake's body unmoving. An emergency shutdown of SCP-6659 is initiated, the scuttle system being deactivated following securing of the control room. Medical personnel arrived to transport Dr. Blake's unresponsive body to the on-site medical bay and perform likely autopsy study, including sampling large quantities from Dr. Blake's oral, nasal, and oral openings, meaning he was bleeding from all three. Afterward, medical examination of Dr. Blake's person revealed various lobes of the subject's brain had undergone extensive and presumably anomalous manipulation, resulting in severe contortions to the tissue of the cerebellum and the cerebrum. Retrieved liquid samples appeared to be a mixture of cerebrospinal fluid and salt water, corresponding to that of Incident E5. Transcript 3. The following is a prose depiction of Dr. Blake's audiovisual conceptual experience during the previous log, as generated through analysis and noetic reconstructing of the subject's brain post-mortem. The transcript presents. At the beginning of the transcript, I will read this as it is from Dr. Blake's perspective. Wait, what? I shouldn't be interfacing with it. I'm just doing a scan. Where's my body? I see a sort of infinite space laid out before me, immediately reminded of what I'd heard about Gottfried and seeing the noosphere. There is a background of darkness, interrupted ambiently by points of soft light. Some lights drift in all directions, while others beam towards each other, trading places, forming shapes, connections, ley lines. Each one I glance at twinkles at me, and instantly I know something, an immensely small building block of data, a fundamental particle of an applicable concept. There is no scale to this world, like clouds. Everything looks much closer than it is, likely. An immensely dim whisper emits from behind my mind, and I turn to face it. Here, it gasps, as if straining, frail. I look to the sound, but there is nothing to illuminate the space. The lights keep their distance, shying away from the whisper's source. I will myself towards the fortress. Here, it repeats, each heaving breath triggering a flash of dim red, getting stronger as I come toward. The star idea light points wave wildly behind me, shining patterns into my mind. They tell me not to go, to worship them instead, that it is better this way. I cannot hear them over the Savior's call. Lord, I have kept my faith. I have always known you as greater than these idols. As I reach the center of the darkness, the red billows up around me. I hear a great shrieking in the sky above, and look up to see an enormous obsidian tower in front of me, formed from the inky black. The tower churns and pulses, its infinite impossible structure branching into a web of hundreds of hands, each of its fingers branching into another 100 hands. The impossible scale of God bears down upon me as its hands reach into my mind. At the center of it all, a wet, sliding noise cracks apart the sky, and an enormous eye opens. The hyper-dodecahedron folds in upon itself and impresses the Holy Spirit upon me. The whispers erupt into static, screaming in my mind. God sees me. The Lord knows my faith. It reaches into my thoughts, and my hands scream at me. My hands are gone, only fingers now. I hum as the red fills my vision, and God brings me up closer, pulling me into its maw, breaking down the human structure, making me an angel of its coven. There is no other option but to offer my mind to it and submit to salvation. God is horrifying. God is beautiful. There is nothing else. Following the detainment of Dr. Blake's remains, Dr. Milton was confined to quarters pending investigation. This ends the transcript of the SCP file. What follows are addendum materials constituting infohazardous and highly anti-mimetic vectors. Your perceiving this following message implies you have been integrated with Oracle class cognitive resistance capabilities and are therefore not at risk. If you believe to be perceiving this message in error, blink 3 times. Should this or further content persist, close this file immediately and contact your site's MAID liaison. Once again, if you haven't been fitted, do not proceed further. Addendum 4, Project Update. Project Prometheium. The following is an excerpt from Dr. Placeholder, Project Lead, Exoteric Polymath, an excerpt from Project Prometheium. Allow me to bring you up to speed. The noosphere can be thought of as the set of all human ideas capable of conceptualizing. It can also be thought of as a collective consciousness. However, much more literally, it is the aggregate of the informational structures contained within all human brains, i.e., the sum total of exactly all conscious and subconscious thoughts humans are having at any given instant. Recent studies go so far as to suggest that every bit of noetic information within human thought space corresponds directly to a unique neuron, or category thereof, in some number of human brains. This has serious implications upon the consequences of Project Dididium and SCP-6659, considering what the machine does by mapping a collection of concepts associated with an idealized, personified ideal. It alters said concept such that connections between them cannot form within the noosphere. The individual conceptual elements can still be comprehended, but the eidetic construct of the targeted deity is no longer perceptible. If we are to understand that these conceptual elements map to physical segments of the human brain, much more is being severed than just deific relations. In the 6 months since Incident E5-B, various forms of mental degradation have been observed in minor fractions of the population, including increased rates of early onset dementia, aphasia, dysphasia, and acute paralysis. Various disinformation campaigns have been enacted to hide such. The likelihood of such developments appear to be vastly more common in individuals whose primary entities of worship were those decommissioned via SCP-6659. Evidently, the complex nature of conceptual association is not, and likely functionally cannot be, understood by humans. What's more troubling is the extra-noospheric entity Dr. Blake gave his life to discover. His final actions represent an unprecedented leap of faith in the direction of the entity beyond conception. One we should hardly be able to cogitate. Dr. Blake's faith was shattered by SCP-6659, resulting in a vacuum of worship. Yet, the brain is an adaptive instrument, and his began searching for bigger, more powerful ideas. And the idea noticed. We have forced human cognition to expand into deeper, uncharted waters, and we are unprepared for the horrors which lay there. This brings us to the operational procedures of Project Prometheium. Project Prometheium itself is to combat extra-noospheric threats via the channeled worship of the ideal of humanity, as achieved through the following vectors. Basically, this project is to create a god, an entity in the memeplex based around the Greek titan Prometheus, the champion of humanity. This entity conceptually would be artificially created by the Foundation in a poltergeist-like method to offset the negative influence from other harmful and malevolent entities on the sake of humanity. Phase Alpha. Project Prometheium itself is to be extrapolated from humanity and normalcy-aligned ideas, personified as Titan-class Olympian entity 014. Prometheus. This deity's identity as progenitor and assistant of human civilization and development, punished unfairly by its brethren, is to be propagated as a mimetic construct by all possible non-disruptive vectors, including manipulation of the education system, the entertainment industry, and religious groups of interest, anomalous or otherwise. Phase Beta. Extra-noospheric ideas, eidetic constructs are to be generally ignored by as many personnel as possible, while maintaining efficacy in Project Prometheium's operations. Following its manufactured re-apotheosis, Prometheus is to be elevated to the highest feasible level of worship, allowing highly beneficial reciprocal worship in humanity due to the core tenets of its conceptual makeup. Phase Gamma. Through systemized, large-scale prayer by Foundation personnel, Promethean analysis is to locate potentially hostile extra-noospheric entities and isolate their constituent quanta into human-safe fragments. These fragments themselves must be targeted in tandem by Prometheus and SCP-6659, taking extreme care to re-render them dormant. Phase Delta. Dormant components of human thought space are to be restructured into either the Prometheus memeplex or another humanity and normalcy aligned eidetic construct deemed symbiotic with it. The noosphere's gaps are to be filled and fortified such that it possesses the necessary cognitive defense to handle higher order concepts. The following eidetic complexes have been specifically targeted by Project Prometheus. Quinary mathematical operations, the primordial ideas of rage and violence, the perception of many disparate points as composing some larger shape, i.e. a constellation, the arbitration of optimistic ideals into unreasoned, indefensible motivations, the conceptual idea of a finger being severed from a hand. So ends today's lecture on SCP-6659 from the Department of Tactical Theology. Once again, I'm Dr. Notissier. That's all for today. Stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe. Secure, contain, protect.